You want to know what I really miss right now? It's when I used to look at a gacha game and go, hey, that kind of looks like a pile of shit, doesn't it? Simpler times. That feels like it was about 1,373 days ago. Genshin Impact, for as good as it is, and for as hot of a take as that is nowadays, is a game that has really, in my opinion, changed the games industry for the worse. You see, the thing about gacha games is gacha games tend to breed more gacha games, not only in the sense that once one succeeds, more get made, but also once your mental fortitude breaks down and you actually start to play one of these games and God forbid spend money on it, it seems like you're much more okay with adding more to your roster until you start playing tons of them, which is the case of me right now. You see, in their own way, HoYoverse has become basically the Blizzard or Riot of gacha games, and what I mean by that is they keep making massively successful games and using the funds and popularity of the previous game to advertise and make the next one, and they just keep making more and more, and honestly they're pretty damn good, and that's the problem. We want to keep playing them and they keep making them, and really, why wouldn't they? They'd be absolutely insane to not capitalize on this. It is proven to work. Yeah, sure, you may upset some players, and some players may be turned off from trying it completely, but it doesn't matter because you hook enough people, you get enough people in the battle pass and welcome, and bam, they're making bank. That is where my problem is. I'm playing Genshin, Star Rail, Wuthering Waves, and soon to be Zenless Zone Zero. So that's $5, $15, $5, $15, $5, $15, $5, $15. You see, it's at a time like this, and I can't help but reflect on the past time of my life where I was playing World of Warcraft, and that $15 a month subscription really seemed like a lot of money at some periods of times. Now I'm paying around $20 to $25 every 42 days, roughly, on 3 different games, soon to be a potential 4 if I actually decide to buy the Battle Pass and Welcome equivalent in Zenless Zone Zero, because we all know they're going to be there. Not to mention the times where I break down in a moment of weakness and still manage to spend the first top-up bonuses, and God knows what else these games try to sell me, trying to get a character that looks really damn appealing, because the characters in these games just keep getting better and better and better. It's times like this that you really can't help but envy the people who manage to happily play these games as free-to-play, especially if they could easily spend money themselves, but they have the self-restraint to not do it, or they never did in the first place. Because it's not lost on many of us that free-to-play players are really getting one of the best values out of these games. They are getting amazing quality games that are in part funded by whales, but also just the vast majority of people paying this glorified subscription fee. And it really just goes back to the main point of this, and that is the problem, that these games are quality games. Now, there are some people that will try to fight you on that, but there are pretty good odds that that person was probably once an enjoyer of these games and just grew jaded with it because it just didn't turn out to be what they wanted it to be, or it didn't evolve in a way that they expected it to. I mean, come on, if you've been around the internet for any period of time, you know that that is not something that is unique to these games. I don't think I've ever played a game where everyone is just happy all the time and there are no people that just exist in the community to hate on it. Granted, I will say that Genshin gets an awful lot of it. It seems like a good 50% of the player base exist only to crap on the game, and they just can't let go of it. They can't move on. And maybe that's because Genshin is such a high quality game. Yeah, we all know that there are aspects of this game that could use some work, and we all have our own opinions of what that may be. But for the most part, they've really been working on the content that is keeping most of the player base that have been playing this whole time continuing to play. That is pump out new characters, new stories, and new regions, which are basically just a giant spoon for new characters to feed people. And what I'm about to say does not just apply to Genshin, but applies to Star Rail and Zenless Zone Zero, and honestly even Wuthering Waves, even though it's a different company. But all of these games have such amazing trailers, absolutely amazing music. I am a video game soundtrack enthusiast, and honestly, I think Genshin, Star Rail, and all of these games will probably be in my top lists for a long time to come. They are doing a really good job on them. Quite frankly, I really don't think they need to. These games would probably do really well even without that insane amount of effort put into the promotional material and even the in-game soundtracks. Again, these games are not low quality games, and quite frankly, they really don't need to go this high quality to sell really well. Gacha games have been just slumming it for like a decade before Genshin Impact, and they were doing great. Maybe not exactly great in the Western markets, but they were doing great in their own right. And as these games start to move to PC, they start to get a different reputation. When a lot of people see a game like Genshin Impact and they see that it's on PC, they don't think gacha. A lot of the people didn't even know what a gacha game was. They never heard of it. And I don't know about you guys, but there have been so many people that I've talked to in the last 4 years or so that when I mention Genshin Impact, they're like, oh, isn't it that gambling game? The reach that it had was absolutely insane, and a lot of that is owed to exactly when it released. It was a bad time for the world. A lot of people were locked inside, had government stimulus checks burning holes in their pockets, and an unprecedented amount of free time for many people who were otherwise working full-time jobs. I mean, really, when you look back on it, it's hard not to think that like Genshin Impact dabbled in the dark arts smarts to release at like the perfect time. I mean, they planned a multi-platform launch covering PC, PlayStation, mobile, and at the time rumored to be a Nintendo Switch version. Like, come on, how much more luckier can you get with your release window? And not only that, but they had basically the success of Breath of the Wild to backpack off of. And Breath of the Wild also had massive appeal and is one of the most critically acclaimed games that have come out in the last decade. And yeah, it's not a clone like a lot of people like to say it was, but it was enough to get people's foot in the door based off of how similar they were. The real problem here is that HoYoverse keeps making good games, and it almost feels ridiculous to kind of wish they would stop, and that maybe one would fail. Honestly, it would be kind of like a blessing if Zenless Zone Zero ended up being not a very good game that I didn't want to keep playing. For example, Star Rail, I didn't even really have an interest in Honkai Star Rail. I was watching it kind of. I was just really skeptical of a turn-based RPG where characters only had a couple abilities. That is drastically different from games like Final Fantasy, Bravely Default, Dragon Quest, where characters have a giant roster of spells, abilities, specials, and stuff like that to make combat a little bit strategic and more interesting. However, I was very wrong, and Star Rail is honestly one of the best turn-based games I've ever played. And Zenless Zone Zero, on the other hand, I've already played that game. I know I like it, and I really don't think there's going to be some game-changing moment later on that, changes that for the worst. It's just a damn shame that these three great HoYoverse games are all gacha games, and Wuthering Waves is too, which basically one-for-one copy Genshin's business model. It's pricey when you play a bunch of them at once, and once you're used to it, it's a little sad to imagine playing free-to-play. I know, most of you are just going to say, just play the game free. I don't think I'd enjoy it, to be honest. I just have to come to terms with the fact that these games have really pulled me in, I love them. They're fun, and I do want to play them. I enjoy them, much as I wish I didn't. And I think we've all probably imagined at some point, what these games would be like if you maybe didn't have to wish for characters. What if they just aggressively monetized the cosmetics? Would it be as big? Would it potentially even be bigger, or would it have just flopped because it wouldn't have got as much money? I mean, one thing is for certain, that if characters themselves were not the biggest selling feature, that we wouldn't probably have as many characters as we do now. Some people, that might be a good thing. For most people, that means their favorite character may have never been created, and instead we'd probably just have like 30 skins for Ayaka and Kaching. Maybe, who knows? League of Legends still releases a ton of characters. They obviously have to worry more about balance than Genshin does, but they also have characters that have like 10 plus skins. Sometimes I just worry about the health of the industry, man. Like, you never know what game is gonna look at Genshin and be like, we could do that. I mean, like, I think of horrible scenarios, like what if Smash, like Super Smash Bros, converted to a gacha game where you had to pull for characters? What if, I don't know, any number of franchises can stop making what they've been making and make a gacha game because they see how popular it is? And sadly, when you attach a really popular IP to a gacha game, it can kind of be really successful. I mean, just look at Fire Emblem Heroes. I honestly have no good things to say about that game. Tons of people enjoy it. I'm glad that you enjoy it. If you do, I hated it. And I'm a massive Fire Emblem fan. Monster Hunter has a Pokemon Go-like game, which, as we know, wasn't a gacha game, but it made a ton of money. So, of course, they're capitalizing on that and getting in on it too. I also recently saw that they're having a Match 3 game. So, I guess Monster Hunter is truly mainstream now if they're trying to milk it with a Match 3. And I don't want to make it sound like Genshin is entirely to blame or HoYoverse is entirely to blame. Gacha games and mobile games have been existing in the Western market for decades now. Before HoYoverse, there was the Supercell games like Clash of Clans, Clash Royale, a game that I myself spent a lot of money on. It's just that the HoYoverse games have really set a standard now for what you can charge. Punishing Grey Raven, the game that came before Wuthering Waves from the same company, is a lot like Honkai Impact. It wasn't nearly as popular in the West, but also it was a lot more generous. Apparently, it is very easy to get every single character without spending money, but then Wuthering Waves basically decided to say, nah, screw that, we are going to do exactly what Genshin is doing because it works. Then the funny thing is, all it takes is to be a little bit more generous and you get a lot of positive press because you're known as doing something more generous than Genshin. And one of the biggest criticisms levied against Genshin over the years is just how little things like anniversary rewards and stuff were. And of course, as we all know, HoYoverse themselves takes advantage of that, with Star Rail being a good deal more generous around events like that than Genshin it was, or has been, or is, which is always just a little funny, thinking that you're smiting Genshin Impact by spending your money on Star Rail instead. Yeah, really sticking it to them. The TLDW here is, I'm excited for Zenless Zone Zero, and I almost Wish I wasn't. Maybe it won't last. Maybe this will be the boiling point, and maybe I'll drop one of the other games. I doubt it, because I'm enjoying them all. Are you guys excited for Zenless Zone Zero? I am. I mean, you know, kind of. There's a lot going on right now. A lot of updates for other game stuff going on at the same time. And Zenless Zone Zero, like most of these gacha games, will probably take a lot of my time in the first couple days, and then it will go on daily maintenance mode and just be thrown into the normal routine. In any case, that's really all I got. So thank you for watching. Thank you to my members and patrons for supporting me as always. Hope you enjoy Zenless Zone Zero. If you are looking forward to playing it, it's fun. And I'll see you in the next one.
Attaboy!